Well, hello there. I hope everyone's doing great and having a fabulous year so far. I've been asked many times about my testimony and how I got sober. I like to feel it is exciting and unique and crazy. The day I got sober was November 3rd, 1993, and I had no intention of getting sober. As a matter of fact, if I'd really given it any thought, with Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's Eve on the horizon, I probably never would have gotten sober. But my divine appointment came without any invitation from me. I have to confess, I was living a pretty evil life, very corrupt. When I share my testimony, I often say that I was a liar, a thief, and a whore. And that's the way it was before I got sober. At the time, I was living a life selfishly and totally without regard for any other people or my children. And I was a single parent at the time. I say I was a thief because I was embezzling from my employer. I was a liar because I was living a double life. And I was trying to maintain the appearance of responsibility and propriety. I'd be going to work, maintaining a household, and using my drugs and alcohol in secret. So this double life, I was hiding in the bathroom half the time, shooting up. I was totally living a life of irresponsibility and deception and manipulation. I say I was a whore because there were times when I would give sexual favors for drugs. I was lonely. And I was always just wanting to be loved, just looking for that person. When I was going through my sex inventory with my sponsor, I told her, I just want to be loved. And she would say, Debbie, if you want to be loved, you need to become more lovable. Ouch. I wanted to live a life that was different, but I was very promiscuous. Much of that had occurred from my early childhood, and I'll talk about that at a later date. However, there's an old expression that women give sex for love and men give love for sex, and that's particularly true in the addiction lifestyle. Anyway, my usual daily routine was I would get up, go off to work, and then when I got off work, I'd go to the bar. My intention was to drink, play darts, dance, listen to music, and, if I could get lucky, pick up a guy. But before I could do that, I would go into the bathroom and do what is called a bump. Now, in layman's terms, that means I would shoot up a little bit of meth just to get the night started. However, on this particular night, God had other plans for me. So I got into the stall and I pulled out my rig and I laid it on the toilet tank and I prepared my hit when suddenly there was a voice in my head, and the voice was saying, Debbie, you're a stain on society. You're sucking somebody else's air. You're a worthless individual. You've never been a good person. You've never been a good human being. You've never been a good mother or a good friend or daughter. Why don't you just give yourself a lethal dose of that methamphetamine and go into cardiac arrest and go out in a blaze of glory? You know that's what you've always wanted. And suddenly I heard another voice. And that voice said, Debbie, what are you thinking? You have a family that loves you. You have 2 beautiful children. What are you thinking? It was that moment of clarity that changed my life. I do believe that God met me right there where I was in that stall. I dropped to my knees and I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can see my right knee kneeling on this dirty, filthy drain hole that had hair and vomit and feces all dried up in it. I reached up to the ceiling with both arms and I said, God, please help me. I can't live this way any longer, and I don't know any other way to live. I don't want to die, but I can't live like this. God, please help me, save me. In that moment, there was a shift, and I got up from that floor transformed. I was a different human being. I walked out of that bar and grabbed my coat, leaving my drink untouched, and I never looked back. I got home and I went to bed and I slept for the first time like a baby. But when I woke up the next morning, nothing had changed. Everything around me was still the same. I was the same person. I looked up again, up at the ceiling. I said, God, please help me. What do I do now? I knew that if my feet hit the floor, I was going to fall into that same routine I'd always been in for years. I thought, what do I do now? And then I heard that still small voice one more time. And the voice said, Debbie, go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I couldn't Google the location. In those days, I didn't even have the internet. But I did have the Yellow Pages. And for some of you who have no idea what the Yellow Pages is, it's a phone book. A big, thick phone book. I pulled that phone book out of my nightstand and I opened it up. And there was an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting 14 miles from where I was. And it started in an hour. I got up, I got dressed. And I thought to myself, you can sneak in and out of that meeting. Nobody will see you. It's a noon meeting. Everybody's going to be at work. Well, I was absolutely wrong. But I need to say this. I didn't have a lot of confidence in women in those days, and I didn't trust them. As a matter of fact, I hated them. I was very suspicious of them. I believed that they would take your man and they'd stab you in the back, and women could not be friends. Well, I was wrong about that too, because I showed up in that meeting in 4-inch heels with my Daisy Dukes and my butt cheeks sticking out, with a sport bra on and a little net cover top. And I hate to tell you, I had a live piglet tucked down between my, right there in my chest. Tucked down in there, little piglet. I know that sounds strange, but I was raising pigs at the time, and I had heard that if a runt got rejected and kicked out of the litter, that if it was near some place that was warm with a heartbeat, it would thrive. Okay, so I wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. So this idiot showed up with that pig, dressed like a little whore, which I was, at the AA meeting. And what do I find? It was a women's meeting. As a matter of fact, it was the biggest women's meeting of the week with about 60 women there. And I walk in and I sit down and I was not happy. The meeting was called the Women's Freedom Bound Group. Oh, it was horrible. But I sat down anyways. I walked in looking like the whore that I was, and God bless those women. Not one woman said anything to me about my appearance or about the pig. I knew a little bit about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I knew I was going to need a sponsor. I looked across the room, and there was this elderly woman that's not so different from who I am today. She was a little heavy. She had gray hair. But I went up to her after the meeting and I asked her to be my sponsor. And she said, why are you asking me to be your sponsor? And I said, because you have a kind face and I cannot take rejection at this time. That woman became my sponsor. Her name was Jean and she was amazing. We'd meet every Saturday at the park and I'd chase the pig and she'd chase me. But we got those steps done. Jean had 7 years sobriety, and several months into my recovery, she relapsed and had to go to a treatment center. She wrote me a letter because she wanted me to know what had happened and she wanted it to come directly from her. She told me I needed to get another sponsor because I was just getting ready to do my 5th step and she didn't feel like she could do it with me. I said, no, I don't want to get another sponsor. Well, at 90 days of recovery, Jean died from a massive heart attack in that same women's meeting that I'd met her in. I was so selfish and so self-centered that I thought she died deliberately because I wouldn't get another sponsor. Doesn't get crazier than that. Anyways, Jean gave me the best year of my life. And I have to say that those women, they saved my life. They loved me until I could love myself. All I'm saying is, God will meet you right where you are. And if you want to get sober and you're willing to go to any lengths, you can do it. So do me a favor, one more time. If you got sober and you have a little testimony, drop that into my comment box. I want to hear your story. God bless you and have a great day.